Hey everyone, Wanderbot here, and welcome back to another one of my Steam sales suggestions videos. It's been a long time since I've done this just because, I don't know, a lot of reasons. I'll get into that in another video, but suffice to say I'm hoping to do way more of them now. Especially because this one, I get to listen to the Haven soundtrack. We'll get to that in a bit. So if you are somehow not aware of the Steam sales, it happens 4 times a year, once for every season. This is the summer one, which lasts for the next 2 weeks. And has some of the best sales that you will ever see on PC, where almost every single game is at least 10% off. Some are like 90% off. I've never heard of this game before, but it's certainly cheap at the moment. Boy, Borderlands 3 is 95% off at $3, and it's still probably not worth it. I don't know, I thought Borderlands 3 was fine, but like, it's a very aggressive and stretched out fine right there. But yeah, there's just oodles and oodles of games that you can pick up if you want to. And because there are so many freaking games and there are so many choices, and how are you ever going to pick which ones are actually good or not? I mean, Steam is usually actually kind of good at algorithmically showing you games that you're interested in. Most of the time, I have no interest in this. Actually, never mind, there's a lot of these games that I have no interest in. But I guess it makes sense because I've bought like a considerable portion of the games that I would ever be interested in on Steam, or, you know, developers sent them my direction. But like, this is a pretty good showing, all things considered. Anyway, so in an effort to try and kind of highlight some of the best deals and some of my favorite games, I have a curator page, which I've been slowly adding games to for the last couple of years, where, you know, whenever I have a free moment, I just sit down and just add like oodles of games. I think I added 50 today, something like that. It certainly felt like 50, it was probably closer to 20. But so I will have a link to my curator page, but this is pretty much every single game that I've played for my channel and thought, boy, this was just like a really good game. This is a game that I don't think people should miss. Or at least it's a game that people in like X or Y genre, I don't think they should miss it, ever. Anyway, let's see. So, I mean, I can keep going down this list and I can kind of waggle my mouse at various things. Like Roots of Yggdrasil, maybe not a game for everybody, but if you really liked Islanders or you like roguelike deck builders, it's super good. And so on and so forth. But because even this list is kind of ridiculous and there's too many things, and not all of these are amazing deals. Like, I love Arco. 35% off. This is a good sale for the game, but unless you were looking for Arco, I don't think that's going to be a deal that, like, really pushes the dial too much. On the flip side, let's go to like Songs of Silence. So this was a 4X strategy / like heroic strategy game that I played last year. It came out in November, and I think they had a big DLC come out recently, or it was like an update. I don't know. I need to go back and check. Yeah, Light Eaters, whatever this is. But they got a big DLC a couple months ago, and is like genuinely one of the prettiest games I think I've ever played. Like, they really went hard with the illustrated cards. The gameplay has this kind of gorgeous atmosphere to it, and just like every single part of this game just looks nice. It's very storybooky, and it has some of the more interesting gameplay I've seen in the genre too, as rather than controlling things like on a turn-by-turn, hex-by-hex, square-by-square basis, you were instead just pitching your army at your foes and just letting them go wild, and then you can activate cards to do various abilities on the map instead. And so it's a little bit chaotic and it's a little messy, but as somebody who gets a little bit bored of turn-based strategy, it's kind of nice to be able to just let the game play itself. It's also got like a full campaign story that I think is kind of short, but the actual skirmish mode is pretty substantive. Next up is Haven. This is one of my favorite games of all time. It's not the most like substantial game. The actual gameplay is pretty basic. Just pick a move, hit the monster, time your abilities well, and that's it. But it's got a really, really gorgeous aesthetic and features a like, features this. It's a couple that is actually like together at the very beginning of the game, and it's kind of a story of their relationship on the run on this alien planet, trying to hide from the society that they belonged to. And it's like a really good kind of date-ish game to play with a significant other. So Shell and I had a very, very good time playing through it. And like the storytelling, the world, the characterization, always is just like a really solid, enjoyable product. It also has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, and you are listening to it now, and you'll be listening to it for the rest of this video. but it is normally $25 down to $10, which is just a really good price for what it is. I sincerely hope that Game Bakers goes back and makes a follow-up to this game at some point, because the world was just fascinating. Like, even just hearing about the characters talking about it made me want to see more of it. And as a fun update, you can actually pick the genders of each character. So if you didn't want to go with the usual, like, the generic pair, you can actually mix it up. And I think that's swell. Let's see. So beyond that, we also have Ultros, which is... I don't know why it has mixed reviews at this point. Seems fine. I think it's mostly just people finding it being like, eh. Ultros is one of the prettiest Metroidvanias I think I have ever played. It's got this, like... I'm gonna say it's this, like, hyper neon, oversaturated style, where the actual, like, foreground and environment you're running around on is pretty much just silhouette, and the backgrounds are just gorgeous and heavily illustrated. It's the art for the game was done by the guy who did the art for Hotline Miami 2. I think he also did the music for the game, but I could be wrong. But it is just like every single scene, every single moment is gorgeous. It can be a little bit hard to look at. Luckily, they have a whole mess of accessibility settings, so you can actually change it so it's actually easier to see what's going on, and it's not as distracting, which I think is really cool. It also has just like a weird, interesting universe, because I think the ship you're trapped on may or may not be an eldritch god being, kind of, sort of. And then also the game has like a really extensive farming mechanic that is, I think, how you get the good ending of the game, which is kind of fun in its own way. But yeah, normally it's also 25 down to 10. You will notice a lot of the games I'm suggesting are games that were, you know, kind of in the high teens, low 20s, and then have been brought down to about $10, because I think for me, $10 is that, like, threshold of, like, yeah, I'd pick that up at that price. Speaking of, Crow Country, not quite down to 10, but it is genuinely one of the best horror games I've played in a long time. Very much a riff on, like, original Resident Evil, but with kind of like an even, well, I don't know if I want to say an even chunkier style. I'd actually have to go back and play the original ones at some point to see how they match up. But like, this looks like a game that you would have played on your N64, and like gameplay mechanics, mostly just they've refined it and refined the formula since those days. But very much this is a healthy dose of nostalgia, and also just kind of an interesting puzzle game, because you have almost a full run of the park. Because you're going through this Crow Country, this defunct amusement park that is overrun by weird zombie creatures. And so your job is to... Well, you know what? I'm not actually going to explain the plot at all, because I think the plot is interesting and I'd be afraid of spoiling things. But you are investigating and trying to find something in there. And so you'll find like keys in odd places, and you can use those to open up doors, which may get you access to like the grenade launcher or a different kind of key or something like that. It's very Resident Evil, and in such a good way. My wife and I actually did a kind of played this game in parallel and raced. And it was really interesting how much we diverged constantly. You know, she'd go one way, I go another, and we would not reconverge for a very long time. Next up is Gloomhaven. This is, yeah, is that 35? 35 down to 12.25. Gloomhaven is one of the best board games ever made. Like, if you go to Board Game Geek, it is, I think, still in the top, like, 10 or 20 or so. But it is a tactical, turn-based, like, adventure RPG. Effectively a Dungeons & Dragons campaign or any other tabletop RPG campaign. With tons of, like, character customization, a really interesting ability system. Effectively, all of your abilities are cards, and each card is split into two parts. So you can, whenever you take your turn, you use the like top action of one card and the bottom action of another, and you can't do like top or bottom. So you have to pick and choose. And you also, like, your initiative order is determined by the cards you pick. So both of these cards are really low numbers, so they start early. Hence why they're here on the initiative order. But like, you could pick slow and end up after every enemy. And sometimes that's actually good. And on top of that, you also have like weird requirements, like don't leave any gold on the ground, or, you know, get exhausted over the course of a run. So you will, if you want to level your characters up, you have to do these like arcane and often kind of inconvenient things just to be able to get that extra power. And I think that's actually a really cool system. It is perfectly fine solo, but I will say it's actually a lot of fun if you bring friends along. As the game is fully playable in 4-player co-op, and so yeah, you can just give each party member to a different player. And it honestly makes the game kind of faster because everybody gets to kind of pick and choose their turns independently of each other, as opposed to having to, like, well, plot out 4 different characters' actions in one turn. And also it's just more fun with friends. Next up is Cassette Beasts, which I guess also might be considered more fun with friends. Specifically, it is a 2v2 monster collection RPG where at every fight you have at least 2 creatures on the field. Sometimes you get summons, sometimes enemies have more than that, but usually it's always 2v2. And it has these like really gorgeous pixel art monsters that you can play with, each with their own like unique strengths and abilities and passive effects. So you can do some really wild like build crafting for each one of them. When I played, I had my starter who had a chance to reuse an ability whenever they crit, hit a weakness, or just hit in general. And I would be able to throw out like an AoE, and then every single one of those abilities would proc independently of each other. So if I managed to hit like 2 enemies and procced both, those could then proc other abilities, which would then proc the original ability again. And so I could fire off a move and wait for a little while, and everything would just explode, or wait and watch as everything just explodes in front of me. And it was just super fun. A little busted, but it was fine. The other thing about the game is that it is an open world exploration kind of game with some light Metroidvania elements. Effectively, like you get the ability to glide or fly or climb from certain monsters that you find in the open world. And those give you access to different places and regions and stuff. And it's neat. It's a lot of fun. And they had a update at least a while ago. I think it was sometime last year. That adds full, I think up to 8-player multiplayer, where you're all just running around in the same world simultaneously, which I think is actually a really neat idea. I was hoping I could pull it up here. It also has kind of a persona system where you have different companion characters as your second player, and you can like increase your relationship points with them and have like little cutscenes and story moments. And it's charming. It's also got a really good soundtrack. Ah, here it is. Perfect. So one of the last features that I want to highlight is you can fuse your monsters together. And, like, it doesn't look as good because a lot of these are just like, I mean, if you ever saw Pokemon fusions, it's that. They're just stitching the 2 sprites together and scaling them up a little bit, so they're not as bespoke as the, like, individual units. But on the flip side, it means that you can combine all of your passives and all of your abilities and all of your stats for a really, really wild mix of strategic depth and busted build crafting. I don't know. Every time you fuse, things get kind of wild in a very good way. And the soundtrack kicks in. That the game has a kind of dual layer soundtrack where a lot of fights will just, you're just jamming along as the regular fight music, boss music, whatever. The moment you fuse, the lyrics kicks in, and it just feels so good the moment that happens. Okay, right. I don't think I mentioned price on that one. Cassette Beasts, also 20 down to 10. Citizen Sleeper is... So there are 2 Citizen Sleepers at this point. The first one came out a couple years ago. Second one came out earlier this year. Not as good of a deal, but Citizen Sleeper 1, perfectly cromulent. Honestly, I think I like it better. I am sorry, jump over the age. Citizen Sleeper 1 plays more like a kind of life sim tabletop RPG, where you are playing as this cyborg human clone thing. You're a digital copy of a person who sold their digital copy of themselves as an indentured servant for a corporation doing, grunt labor and stuff that no normal human would be able to do. And that sucks. So you escaped and fled into, the stars, and you find your way to this space station. You're trying to find your way and also, evade capture because the corporation wants you back because you're not exactly a legal entity in any way, shape, or form. And it's neat. It's got some really great storytelling, and the gameplay mechanics are kind of fun. Every turn you roll X number of dice, and then you can slot them into different abilities different actions with varying degrees of success. And some will have like negative effects if you screw up, put in a bad die. And so there's a lot of action economy, especially early on when you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of supplies or abilities or stat points. And you can really, I don't know, I want to say get into the mindset of this refugee character in a way that no other game has managed to get me immersed And so it's truly one of those, like, one of the best stories I think I've ever played, one of the best life sims I've ever experienced, and one of the better visual novels too. And that one is down to $6, which is just an absurdly good price for what it is. Next up is Outer Wilds, not the cheapest price, however, this is, I think, my favorite game I have ever played. It is the one that has made me cry repeatedly, which takes some work, and is, okay, Echoes of the Eye has to be mixed in. I don't know the price, unfortunately, so Outer Wilds is normally $25 down to $15 for the sale, but you do want to get it with the DLC Echoes of the Eye, which is down from $15 to $10, but I think if you get both together, it's a decent deal. It just, Steam won't tell me anymore, which is rude, but whatever. But if you've not seen Outer Wilds before, I don't want to talk too much about the story, but you are effectively an astronaut exploring the solar system, trying to uncover a 1,000-year-old mystery spread across, you know, all the different planets, and a couple of space stations and some other things, you know, going to a wide variety of environments too. You know, alien runes, this freaking thing, that's your ship, and there are a couple other astronauts you can interact with, though they're kind of light. But the game is a very open-ended puzzle game where you're finding clues in one place and bringing them elsewhere. I guess if you grew up with games like Myst, you're probably going to adore this one. Next up is Wingspan. I guess I probably should have put this after Gloomhaven, but whatever. Wingspan is one of the other best board games I've ever played, where you're putting together tableaus of birds in different environments to get as many points as possible, and each of them have different effects, like, well, tuck a card from your hand behind this bird. If you do, draw another card. That lets you cycle cards out of your hand, and also tucked cards are worth extra points. And so you can put things together like this that give you tons of points or tons of card cycling. So if you want to take this action, for example, you could cycle through much of the draw deck to try and find a very specific bird that you might want, which can be extremely helpful at getting as many points as possible. Or not. It's a lot of fun with friends, it's a lot of fun with the physical version, but the digital version is, I'm gonna say, kind of the best iteration of this game. Is just, it flows a little bit smoother. It's got a really, really solid soundtrack that I actually have the vinyl for. And you don't have to worry about setup or teardown or shuffling or any of that stuff, and it just handles everything automatically. Just the build quality on this game is solid. It does have a couple of expansions that are available, so the base game is normally 20, it's down to 8 at the moment. That's fine. I think the base game on its own is a perfectly cromulent experience. However, I would generally recommend either the Oceania or European expansion. European just adds more. Oceania actually adds new resources, and one new resource called Nectar that's kind of a wildcard resource and is quite useful. So that one's probably worth picking up, and if you do pick it up, only one player has to have the DLC. So if you want to pick it up, get the DLC and host, your friends don't need to have the DLC to play it with you, which is real nice. Next up is Death Stranding. Pardon the fact that I've ignored it. I own it on PlayStation. Own on another platform. I really don't like the fact that it shows up as ignored. But Death Stranding is an apocalyptic mailman simulator is the best way of describing it. You might have seen people memeing about it back in the day. I don't think I ever rode around on this weird thing, now that I think about it, but your entire goal is to... I don't think I've ever done this either. Where is this location? Oh well. Your entire goal is to deliver packages across a wasteland beset by murder ghosts that cause people to go atomic the moment the murder ghosts touch them, for the most part. And there's also like bandit terrorists that are stealing your packages and trying to end the world. And there's a lot of other stuff. It's weird, it's wild, it's a Hideo Kojima game. There's a racing mode apparently, I don't remember that in the slightest. And it's fine. There's just a lot of stuff to this game. It's hard to describe, but it's a very zen experience kind of in all levels, you know, walking from point A to point B, trying to traverse, difficult terrain, putting down ladders to make like scaling, getting around easier, or climbing ropes to descend safely, and also trying to protect your packages, which are pretty fragile and get destroyed by almost anything. And then you get this like stupid cannon that just lets you fire your packages long distances, which is also extremely helpful, though at that point I usually just chucked things into a truck and would drive around with that instead. I think I should try the cannon for the second game, but yeah, that's part of the reason why I'm suggesting this, is that Okay, that's the upgrade. Death Stranding 2 just came out and is like equally good. And so if you have not played this game before, it's genuinely worth giving a shot. Especially at, you know, $16. Like, this is Hideo Kojima at his best. I think some people would probably argue Metal Gear Solid 3 is probably better. And, you know, I could take that, but very much Death Stranding is a weird experience and there's nothing quite like it, and I truly recommend it. Next up is Battle Chef Brigade. I'm not going to say that this is the greatest game I've ever played. It is a weird mix between kind of action RPG, where you are going out and fighting monsters to get ingredients from them and then bringing them back and cooking them into various dishes to impress judges. However, it's extremely anime in a very good way, beautifully animated, has a decent story, and you can completely trounce the game by just using only crockpots, which amused me to no end. And also, just, it's freaking cheap, man. $4 is a great price for what this game is. I think they also like went back and added a lot of multiplayer abilities on other things. Then what is this? I think this is just them teasing their next game. Because yeah, they're making Battlesuit Aces, which is a deck builder RPG that's coming out later this year. Next up is Dread Delusion. It is, what is that? $20 down to 13. If you ever played Morrowind or really any Elder Scrolls game and you said, hey, this wasn't weird enough, Dread Delusion's even weirder in pretty much all regards. Yeah, like, look at this weirdo. It's effectively a game where there were like all sorts of gods. I'm gonna say they're kind of like your classic pseudo-eldritch, pseudo-Shinto gods. Effectively gods that kind of belong to a mixed but slightly ominous pantheon. So I think this guy was like originally the god of plenty. Well, no, this is just a disciple of the god of plenty. And then that switched over to kind of this like weird Faustian pestilence bounty situation as things got worse, which eventually pissed people off to no end. So, you know, X number of years prior to the start of the story, everybody just universally decides to kill the gods and largely succeed at it. And so you're going around kind of a broken and busted world in the aftermath of everybody killing the gods, and that's neat, and the world is strange. It's set on a bunch of sky islands. You've got a bunch of kind of fractured societies that exist on each one of these, including like an undead kingdom where everybody turned into kind of zombie ghouls and then decided, hey, let's go eat a bunch of people because they tasty. And like a clockwork kingdom that's run by a mad machine god kind of being. It's weird, it's unique. I'm not going to say the gameplay is particularly good compared to, I mean, even a lot of Elder Scrolls games. It's serviceable, it's fun, there's a lot of things that you can do around it, but for the most part I just ended up going with big sword hit enemies at range while backpedaling. Is what it is. What really pulled me in was that the world and the storytelling was extremely satisfying and interesting. And like, I remember the soundtrack and the ambiance also being good. I think it's mostly just like, it's such a weird game, man, that I could not stop playing it earlier this year when I finally sat down to play it. Next up is Shadow Gambit and the Cursed Crew. So I will say this actually extends to every single thing Minimi has produced. I did not know they made this game. That was back in 2014. So Minimi are the people that made Shadow Tactics, Desperados 3, and Shadow Gambit, and then shut down and then have been since revived by Hooded Horse, who picked them up and I think re-recruited everybody who works there. The games are effectively real-time tactical stealth infiltration games, effectively Metal Gear Solid. Actually, I'd say maybe Metal Gear. Original Metal Gear, but with like pausing and multiple characters that you're swapping between to do different things. My favorite is Bush Murder, where you kill somebody and then drag them into the bush and the bush just devours their corpse for some reason. And it makes it really easy to hide evidence that you've been through there, and I came up with a Eldritch God idea of just a sentient bush that, you know, seeks blood. It's been stuck in my head for ages, but yeah, Shadow Tactics is $4, Desperados is 10, and Shadow Gambit, which is the best of them, is also $10 at the moment. And so it's really kind of pick your flavor. Do you want ninjas and samurai? Do you want cowboys? Or do you want kind of, I'm going to say Bayou magic in a more like unique world? The previous ones are much more historical, whereas this one is definitely a little bit more fantastical. It's definitely set kind of in a Bermuda, Caribbean-ish environment, but you're playing as, you know, a variety of cursed and undead pirates fighting against functionally the Spanish Inquisition. It's really cool. It's got a lot of interesting ideas. There's so many different tactical options that you can use to skunk your enemies, and it's also just really well made, and the story is interesting too. And so truly, I will always sing every single one of Minime's games' praises, purely because, one, I want them to stay in business for as long as possible, and because their games are just incredibly good. Next up is Laika, Age Through Blood. This is one of my favorite games of, was it 2023? I think I played most of it in 2024, but it is, I guess they call it a Motorvania. Effectively, you're going around kind of a massive interconnected world on a motorbike, ramping off of things, jumping over enemies and stuff. And you're fighting against, I guess, fascist bird Nazis, and trying to stop them from, I think they're trying to get their hands on nuclear devices, and also, you know, making giant mutated horror beasts that they, you know, use as defensive structures and weapons and stuff. It's weird. It's kind of hard. I don't think you have more than 1 health. The way you avoid damage is by blocking bullets with your bike, or in this case, this player is about to die. But it's kind of an acquired taste across the board. The gameplay is kind of tricky to get right, and it can be punishingly difficult at the best of times, and the characters themselves are kind of glum. It's not a happy game, but it also is very unique. There's nothing quite like it. It's so well made, and the soundtrack is incredibly good. And yeah, what is this? Yeah, down to $8. Once again, absurdly good price. Why is this at the bottom? How'd that end up there? Oh well, where was I? Shadow Gambit to Unsighted. There we go. So this is, I guess I'd call it either a top-down Metroidvania or kind of a Zelda-like. It's really hard to tell. It has a lot of Metroidvania in its DNA because you're finding different abilities that unlock different zones that you can explore. However, it does have like dungeons with bosses and whatnot in a more Zelda fashion. It's Zelda, but it's more open-ended. Maybe that's the easier way of putting it. And also has like this really interesting post-apocalyptic story where effectively, I think it was like kind of an alien resource was found, or a rare resource was found that allowed people to make sentient machines, but that resource is being either hoarded by this kind of tower in this background, or maybe it's being corrupted. It's been years since I've played it, so I'd have to go back and like refresh my memory on the actual story details, but you have to go and get more of this rare resource to keep the machines, the sentient machines, alive and sane. Otherwise they lose their mind and start, you know, trying to kill you and everybody else around them. And so that actually does add a time pressure to the game, because you literally have like a real X number of hours before certain characters go mad, and that can kind of limit the story, the characters you can interact with, or even certain NPCs. Luckily, there's an accessibility option where you can just be like, yeah, I don't want that time pressure, and give yourself like dozens of hours for each character, and so you don't have to worry about that anymore. The other thing I guess I would note within it is that it is co-op. I don't know how many people can play it, but they had added co-op later on, which I think is actually really cool. It's very Souls-like in its kind of core combat. Like, you actually have to worry about parries and dodges and stuff, and can be kind of tricky. But I found that to be a very satisfying experience when I did play it. And they've got a sequel coming out that was sequel. It's something, I don't think it's a sequel. It's like a successor game that looks very Mega Man Legends in such a good way. And I cannot wait to play this one. Next up is Slay the Princess. This is not the best deal. I mean, I guess $12.60 is a fine deal for what it is. Slay the Princess is a choose-your-own-adventure time loop visual novel where your entire stated goal is to slay this princess, and deals with the consequences of you slaying her. And I'm not going to say anything more than that. The whole thing is hand illustrated. It's fully voice acted. It is a lot of fun. And there are just so many branching options and ways to play, and story bits and details. Shell and I played through a complete playthrough in about 5 hours, but there is so much we have yet to see. And so, yeah, at some point I'll probably pick this up for the Switch, so Shell can play through the rest of it on her own. But like, this game is just an incredible experience from start to finish, and just every single aspect of it impressed us the whole way through. Mouthwashing was something I actually played on my own. I usually don't play horror games or walking sims, but Mouthwashing, I think, was one of the candidates for the Indie Game Awards last year that I was one of the jury members for. And so, yeah, I sat down and played this through in the matter of, it says 3 hours, but I think it only took me like 2-ish. But it is a pseudo walking sim visual novel puzzle game about a crew of people that have crash landed, stranded in space, possibly no hope of rescue, and them collectively losing their minds over it, and a lot of other things. I don't want to get into details beyond that, but it is weird, it is messed up, it is deeply symbolic, and it made me feel gross in a way that very few games do, in a way that I like highly recommend everybody experience, just for the sake of like expanding their empathy, especially dudes. I'm not going to explain why, but I think every dude should play this game. Lobotomy Corporation is $8.50. It is, I mean, more or less just an SCP containment facility management sim, where each and every single one of these rooms has a different eldritch horror beast, or, evil fairy tale, or genetic experiment gone wrong, and each and every one of them has specific like ways of managing them. And if you don't do it correctly, they break out and start just killing everyone, and it gets pretty wild. It's really hard managing an entire facility of these guys, and there's, what is this? There's 4 per district, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's 8, 9, and 10, give or take. Like there's a lower level that's not shown here, which is what, 40 different monsters? No, there's more, because some of them you have to actually have 2. So I think you end up managing like 50 some odd creatures, and they absolutely will just lose their mind and break stuff in the worst possible ways. Or you just end up with a hell train that just like randomly every 2 minutes, if you don't press a button, the hell train will just draw a line straight through your facility and kill anybody it hits, which is wild and problematic. It also has a really interesting story that is continued on in their subsequent games, so Library of Ruina and Limbus Corporation, which for some reason is not listed here, and I don't know why. But like, they're definitely acquired taste games. They take some real effort to get through. I highly recommend mods to smooth out the experience a little bit, but there's nothing quite like them, and seriously so satisfying getting to the end of each. I still need to beat Ruina. I am sorry about that. Next up is ATLYSS. This game's honestly more of a meme than anything else. Maybe. It's a fairly competent action RPG with like a wide variety of abilities and weapons to play around with. The character sliders and character customization is maybe a little bit much. It's very fan servicey, but from a cooperative dungeon crawling experience, $5 is like an absolute steal, especially because you can bring friends along. Next up is Oddsparks. This actually, I was not expecting this to be on as good of a sale. Normally it's 30, it's down to 20. Main reason why I'm suggesting it is because it just came out in early access, came out of early access a couple weeks ago, a month ago actually. But this is 1 part Factorio, 1 part Pikmin. You've got a bunch of these like little wood golems that are following you around, doing your bidding, gathering resources for you. There's little drill golems, that's cute. And then monsters that you have to fight for resources using those wood golems. It's neat, it's interesting. I haven't gotten that far in it, but it's got a really lovely woodpunk style with trains. Oh, that's fun. And like just so much factory management. So if you like Factorio but you want something a little bit different, or if you like the idea of Factorio but the over-industrialized nature of it feels kind of weird, this one is genuinely worth taking a look at. I think it's also a lot shorter. Like, the world's smaller and it doesn't require nearly as much like effort to reach the end. And also it has like some level of characters in the story, which is fun. Next up is Mindustry, also a factory automation game, kind of sort of, about making really complex resource chains to both like build up more structures, send resources to other locations, and build a viable defense from invading enemies that are trying to destroy you. So you have to belt ammo in and power and stuff like that. It is a lot of fun. It can be punishingly difficult, and some of the new mechanics and areas, especially in the more recent planet that was added, I think it was last year or the year before, like some of that stuff can be tricky to work around. It does have multiplayer, but I'm kind of waffly on whether or not I like the multiplayer, because all players are locked to the same planet. So when the lead player moves to a different region, everybody comes with. I was really hoping the multiplayer on this one would let everybody play in parallel. You know, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go back and, like, you know, fix up the belts on the first planet while you guys work on defending this one, because too many cooks in the kitchen just feels kind of boring. And unfortunately, no, you can't do that. So you're very much always focused on one map and only one map, which, I mean, means it's a perfectly fine solo experience, but if you're going to play a multiplayer, probably just bring one other person, no more. Next up is Warhammer 40k Mechanicus. This is the game that got me into Warhammer, which means that despite the fact that it is $6-8, it's probably hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you actually fully get into Warhammer. I've gotten deep into Sigmar, and it is honestly fun. I don't regret it in the slightest, especially because Mechanicus is a really solid game. You're playing as a bunch of these kind of tech priests who have gone into this weird robot skeleton crypt, and you're raiding it for technology and then also trying to destroy their power structure. So I think you can loot the place. I forget the exact plot elements, but it plays a lot like XCOM, but without as much cover shooting. You can hide behind walls and stuff, but for the most part, you're just running around and blasting things, hitting them with big sticks or lightning or guns and whatnot. But you can do some really goofy action point manipulation stuff, to the point where I actually completed the final mission against, you know, some giant Necron super bosses. I think I killed them before most of them even spawned. You know, they'd wake up, I'd hit them with a stick until they were dead, and then move on to the next guy without even breaking a sweat. It was very wild. It rewards fun build crafting and completionism in a very satisfying way. Next up, I guess actually, welcome to the roguelike section of this video. There's a lot of them. I love roguelikes, and there's quite a lot of great deals within this. So Rabbit and Steel came out, was it the end? No, middle of last year, last May. It is, yeah, $15 down to $9. And functionally, the game is designed to be a MMO raiding simulator, but for 1 to 4 players, where each and every person has to kind of learn the raid mechanics and master them. Otherwise, you get absolutely wrecked by the bosses you're fighting. But it has roguelike mechanics, so between every boss fight, you get different progression opportunities, you know, little upgrades and whatnot, which means it's really satisfying. Like, it's punishingly difficult, but if you can figure it out and you, like, really master each of these boss patterns, and then master your build, and then find some cool upgrades, like, there's nothing quite like it. I guess apart from playing an MMO, but man, I don't have time for that, nor do I want to pay the sub fee for most MMOs. And so Rabbit and Steel very much just fits that niche in a very solid way. It's bullet heavy, and it can be punishingly difficult if you're not very good at, or not bullet heavy, bullet helly, and it can be punishingly difficult if you're not good at bullet hell bits, but if you can master it, oh, it's so good. Next up is Monster Train. Recommending this largely because Monster Train 2 just came out, and let me double check. Yeah, so Monster Train 2 is normally $25 down to $22.50, which is not much of a sale, but I mean, it did just come out a month ago. The first game, however, came out 5 years ago and is $7.50. You do not have to play the first one to enjoy the second one. However, at that price, I'd highly recommend playing the first one first just to get a feel for the game and see if you want to pick up the second, and then buy the second, because both are incredibly good experiences. They embody the core concept of trying to make the most busted build possible, because otherwise the game is just going to overwhelm you, which means that you are constantly looking for fun, busted ways to mix and match characters and cards together for maximum impact, and it is so satisfying. And the second game refines that and improves on it in every way. But once again, play the first game. It's very good. Next up is Battle Shapers. I don't think this is the best sale. Yeah, it's $15. It is effectively if you took Mega Man and turned it into a roguelite first-person shooter, which, I mean, when I say Mega Man, it's mostly like the core concept of taking down the robot masters and some of the aesthetic choices. But it has a semi-Hades style upgrade system where you're constantly improving certain... You have 2 cores that you start with, and you can find various abilities that upgrade them in different ways, as well as your stats abilities, and you can find randomized guns and equipment that you can mix and match their core components for some really busted builds. Like, I think I had a gun once that would, if I shot another projectile, would reflect the projectile back for a ton of damage. I think that's how it worked. It's been a while. But this is one of those games that I feel is honestly critically underrated. Not a lot of people picked it up and played it, and the reception on my videos was always kind of tepid, which is such a shame because the game is a ton of fun. It can be punishingly difficult here and there, but as far as like first-person shooter roguelikes go, it's one of the better ones I have ever played, and like I hope people don't miss out on it. Let's see. Next up is Nova Drift. This one I don't think is nearly as underrated yet. Wow, actually 12,000 reviews. Good on you, Chimeric. But it's $18 down to 1080. I think it actually just got a big update a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it just got the daily challenge and also Space Whales, which is kind of fun. But this is, I'm gonna call it a bullet purgatory. It embodies both, you know, bullet hell game design, but then also bullet heaven game design, where you are just making these really busted, crazy combos, kind of inspired by Path of Exile build crafting. And you pretty much have to come up with the most busted builds possible because this game is not easy. I actually have not beaten the new final boss yet, and I really should go back and put some time into doing that because this is such a good game. The soundtrack is also just nice and chill. And yeah, the sheer amount of build variety, the different upgrade paths, each and every one of these is like a parallel tree that you can just really fine tune for the greatest possible impact, and if you can't, you lose. Next up is Loop Hero, which is a really interesting roguelite where you alternate between town building meta progression and then town building gameplay, kind of sort of, where you're having your character pass through this infinite loop, passing by different locations, fighting monsters along the way. And every time that you fight them, you either get cards that you can lay down as tiles on the board or gear and equipment that you can put on your character to improve your combat abilities. And, you know, ultimately it's maybe a little thin gameplay-wise, but it's still deeply satisfying, especially with finding the correct builds to win and do well. It also has one of the best soundtracks I think I've ever heard in a video game. And just like, I turn that soundtrack on constantly just to listen and bop around to. Yeah, you know what? Let's actually just listen to the Loop Hero soundtrack for a little while. Anyway, it is, yeah, it's $15 normally, down to $3.75, which is, wait, oh, because I disabled playback. I will have to fix that. That's really annoying. But yeah, Loop Hero is just such an incredibly solid experience, and there's nothing quite like it. There's been a couple of pseudo successors, but none of them really capture any aspect of the magic, and so I usually don't even think about them. Next up is The Last Spell, which is a horde survival turn-based tactical strategy RPG. Effectively, it's Final Fantasy Tactics crossed with They Are Billions, where you're playing as a small squad of heroes defending a town from encroaching hordes of undead and demon monsters and stuff. I actually haven't played much of the 1.0, so I can't speak to it, but it has this kind of really satisfying roguelite flair where you're constantly getting resources that you spend on a variety of upgrades to give you like a better chance of winning future runs and further difficulty options. And then also even mid-run, you were building up your town and spending money and resources to improve your defenses, buy better gear and equipment for your characters, improve your characters, level up your characters, stuff like that. There's just so many different layers and ways to kind of fine-tune your build and min-max things, which I found incredibly satisfying when I played it. And also, like, there's nothing like mowing through dozens of zombies in a single turn with the judicious use of fireballs and artillery strikes and whatnot. Also, it just has a really solid pixel art style. Speaking of solid pixel art styles, Rusted Moss is a really dreary game, but in a way that makes it feel extremely compelling. You're playing as a character who is, I mean, functionally betraying humanity. You are a changeling from the Fey Courts who kind of is returned to the human world in the, I guess I'd say the twilight of humanity. You know, society is starting to break down, and you are there to make sure that that happens, while also I think you're trying to put together the remnants of the Fairy Queen, which I think it's an interesting story. But what elevates the game, apart from just the fact that it's a very good Metroidvania, is the fact that you actually are running around with a grappling hook that is kind of bungee, and so you're using that to like swing and bounce and climb up structures. My favorite is to kind of alternate between the grappling hook and the rocket launcher, so I could do like super boost jumps and travel like way farther than you normally would be able to with regular platforming. And it made for a very satisfying experience platforming around. And I think they've gone back to actually change the game dramatically in a couple of different ways, including allowing you to play as some of the bosses that you'd play in the like normal, like in the normal story. This character with a sword is not the playable character. They're one of the bosses that you would fight. This is the character you normally play as, and so I don't actually know what the gameplay or story is like with the alternate playable characters. I think there's also like a versus mode and some other stuff. It's a lot of stuff. They packed a lot into it, and it is very unique feeling. Ooh. And yeah, they also went back and added new areas, because I think these are things, 7+ hours of new content. Oh god. 300 new rooms. Yeah, so the game got twice as long and twice as large. This will always remain one of my favorite Metroidvanias that I think I've ever played, and is one of those where I like truly hope Metroidvania fans find it, because it is worth the price of admission and worth the time you'd invest into it, truly. And it is, yeah, currently just $10, which I think is a fine price for what it is. Oh, that's not a roguelike. How'd that end up in there? Whatever, it doesn't matter. So next up is Ballionaire. This is pachinko, but roguelike. That's it. It's effectively about making the most busted builds possible using a bunch of different tile synergies. So like chaining each and every one of these caves together gives you a greater effect. Or you can have like grapes that are all piled together surrounded by windmills that can get you billions of gold or gold dollars. And you actually legitimately do have to have the most busted build imaginable, because beating the game can be kind of tricky. It's very luck be a landlord slash like Balatro in its core concept and development. And I think a lot of people would have, well, I know a lot of people have fun with that kind of thing. I do find on a personal level, I do get kind of frazzled playing it, but every once in a while I find a particularly busted build and I have just so much fun with it. And what is it? It's $12.34. That's an odd base price, probably translated from another currency. Oh no, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. What am I doing? Okay, that's actually a very fun base price. But that's down to $8.63 at 30% off, which is a very nice price. Let's see, Ring of Pain is, yeah, down to 6. So Ring of Pain is a card crawler roguelike, where you really don't actually have much ways to interact with the world. You have a spellbook, you have a scroll, and then you can go left or right, or you can sneak left or right, and that's it. So for the most part, every single turn, you're just trying to, or every single run, you're trying to figure out the most efficient way through a ring of enemies, trying to get as many power-ups as you possibly can, trying to fight every single enemy because that's how you get experience and resources and whatnot, while also not getting wrecked because you are constantly getting hit by things. Every time you interact with them, they will hit you back unless you have some means of avoiding that. So I had, you know, one of my runs, I had a ice hammer that if I hit something, it would freeze solid. And so it didn't matter how little damage I did, I would just keep hitting them with that hammer until they were gone. And I think that run was ended because I got shelved from afar and just couldn't do enough damage to kill things. But I mean, it was fun. And every single item has like unique abilities and synergies with other items, and so you can come up with some particularly busted builds. Like, I think underwear inverts your speed, so the slower you are, the faster you go, which can be extremely powerful at times. And there's so many other different ways to break the game. And also it just has this like really weird oversaturated and bizarre art style that makes it kind of iconic looking in a very satisfying way. Alright, next up is SpellRogue. This is effectively what if Slay the Spire but Dicey Dungeons. As far as I can tell, that really is how the game feels to me. The one thing I will say is it is actually very hard. My win rate on this game is abysmal to the point where I don't really make videos on it because I almost always lose in kind of a sad way because I'm just not very good at it. But it's still a very satisfying experience. The different synergies and abilities and ways that you can break the game and make interesting builds and stuff is truly astounding. I think part of it is because in Slay the Spire, you have a deck of like 10 to 20 cards or something like that, and you're constantly cycling them. But it means you can have repeats. Here you only have one of each, which means every single one of them has to carry you through. And so even like junk spells get replaced with much better spells fairly quickly. It's just a matter of like, how do you use them? Can you use them as efficiently as possible? And is it enough to beat the game? And at least for me, the answer is often no. But it's still very satisfying, and it is currently $10. Next up is Dead Estate, which is a lot of things. It is, I would say it's very Binding of Isaac in its core concept, move from room to room, fighting the monsters there, grabbing resources and getting upgrades. However, it does have a non-roguelike mode that is just Resident Evil-y. Some of these screenshots are completely new. What the hell is this? I don't know. And there's like oodles of characters, each with their own stories and little like side quests and things. And I think there's multiple different there absolutely are multiple different game modes. What the heck is going on? Also, it's got a busty witch who is like your one support character. And then there's this guy who is actively chasing you down at all times. So you can never go terribly slow, because he absolutely will. Like he's your time limit and will chase you down if you're going too slow. What was the game? It was the price. Normally it's $15, down to $7.50 for this Steam sale. Next up, I don't know if this is going to be a controversial pick or not. On a personal level, Endless Dungeon has always been actually a lot of fun for me. I know a lot of people have bones to pick with it, but I loved the experience when it came out. I've loved the experience since. They improved what they needed to. You know, everybody progresses in parallel now. Previously, it was only the host progressed, with quests and upgrades and stuff, and that felt extremely strange. And so they've since fixed that part. I think the only thing the game really suffers from is just kind of a lack of content long term, and maybe a little bit of variety issues. You know, a lot of my runs do tend to feel kind of samey after a while. But as far as like spending an evening with the boys, like mowing down monsters and like having a legitimately hard time sometimes, Endless Dungeon is perfect for that. I kind of put it in the same vein as like Castle Crashers, more than even most roguelikes, and it's just really satisfying to play. They also reduced the price. I think it used to be like a $30-$40 game, and now the base price is $15 and the sale price is $10. Unfortunately, okay. Oh, interesting. They removed Denuvo recently. That's good. Yeah. What else have we done? Okay, so let's see. So they've added a skin pack to everybody and the soundtrack and some other things. So they made the Last Wish Definitive Edition free for everyone, and yeah, reduced the base price. And so this was only like a week ago. Good on them. I'm still kind of hoping they come back and do a little bit of fixes or like a DLC, just to add a little bit more and address whatever people don't like about the game. I guess it seems to be buggy, maybe, is the answer. But like truly, I love this game. I had a lot of fun with it. I in fact enjoy it more than Dungeon the Endless by a significant margin. And so like, I hope Amplitude gives it one more shot, maybe. Hopefully Endless Legend 2 does stupid well, and maybe they make like an Endless Legend flavored one. We'll see. Next up is Sandwalkers, which is a mercenary caravan game where you are trying to effectively revive the world tree, because otherwise the world is turning into a desert wasteland and, you know, no one can survive in that. And so you have this massive map that you were exploring and finding different points of interest, doing quests, hunting beasts, grabbing resources, and passing them down to future caravans. Functionally, you know you are doomed. It's just a matter of how far can you go and how much stuff can you send back for your society to use for future runs. It is punishingly difficult, but in a satisfying way. The combat is very Darkest Dungeon. You have kind of frontline, backline, and you're doing like combo abilities and status effects and breaking shields and stuff, which makes for a very solid exploration experience, but then also a very solid like turn-based RPG experience. I haven't gotten super duper far in this one. I mostly did a single run where I was just like agonizingly struggling through the wasteland, hoping for food and just not finding it. But that's part of what makes the game feel extremely cool. And what is it normally? Yeah, it's $20 down to 10. Next up is Pyrene, which actually just got a big DLC kind of recently. I think it was a free update, actually. Yeah, free major update 2 weeks ago. That gives you access to French Brittany, because this is actually set like historically kind of in the Spanish, like a Spanish mountain range, and I guess maybe also parts of France. But it is very like steeped in lore and myth, and is I guess I'm going to call it's a card crawler roguelike, where you can, during your turn, you really don't have a whole lot of options. All you do is like pick which card you move to. So you move here, take 4 damage, and so this would do like 4 damage to you. You would do presumably kill it, but you know, obviously, ouch. And so you still have enough. You can go fight this guy, go here, then maybe you have to find some way of healing. I don't know why this Phoenix is just like super overtuned. I think they just staged the screenshot because I cannot imagine a person would be in this situation. But maybe I'm wrong. But as part of it, you are adding cards to your deck that get added to the board. So this would be a card in your deck. This would be a card in your deck. And so you can modify them or improve them in any way, shape, or form. So like, you can boost the medical plant so it actually heals for 5 and clears poison. Or you find a sword that does like stupid amounts of damage to everything in your vicinity. Or something that gives you a passive effect that's extremely broken. It is punishingly difficult. Like, you can make mistakes and have so many, where you can make mistakes where you go from absolutely cruising, having the easiest time ever, to dead in like 3 moves. And so you very much have to kind of focus on taking things slow and doing things correctly, because otherwise it will backfire on you. But it's still super satisfying, and it has a fairly substantive roguelite meta progression, where you're bringing resources back and rebuilding your town after it got destroyed by this, you know, magical disaster. And it is what? Yep, normally $15, down to 10. Oh boy, we still have a long way to go. Inkbound. Probably should have put this next to Monster Train. If you like Monster Train, you're going to like Inkbound. That's really all there is to say about it. It is a isometric top-down tactical strategy game, where a turn-based strategy game where you're fighting waves of monsters, and between, you know, every battle you find different ways to either upgrade your abilities or add gear and equipment. It uses auto battle build crafting, so you have like set bonuses. So like 1 in Bastion gives you 1 shield per turn, 2 gives you 2, 3 gives you 3, and then you can use that to do other things. So this person is kind of going for a shield / like retaliatory damage build. And if you know what you're doing and you've got the right build for it, you can do hundreds or thousands of damage with every single hit, and like get the whole screen to explode or all sorts of stuff. It is 1 to 4 player multiplayer, and it's honestly just as good in both states. Single player, it's a little bit more fine-tuned around your specific build. Multiplayer is more about like kind of cooperation and figuring out different ways to use your abilities, both for maximum effect, but then also for maximum cooperation, you know, buffing allies or clearing enemies that are going to hit them, or all that stuff. And it is extremely cheap, $30 normally, down to $7.50, which I think is an absolute steal. Originally, a lot of people passed over this game because it was online only, but they got rid of that. So if that was holding you back, don't need to worry about that anymore. And truly bring friends. I think it is a lot more fun just with buddies. Shell and I would play this actually for hours back when it first came out. and I should probably get us to play that again at some point. Next up is Zet Zillions, which is, yeah, $10 normally down to $5, which is an absurdly good price for what is effectively over-the-top anime Slay the Spire. That's really it. It's made by the people that made Wolfstride, which I'm pretty sure... Can I actually check? Yeah, Wolfstride is also extremely cheap. It is a turn-based, like, mecha strategy game, with, like, fairly extensive build crafting. But also, oh shoot, what was it? No more hero style. You have to do a bunch of like dumb mini games to make money and make ends meet in between the fights, which it's kind of an acquired taste for some people, but I thought it was cool. But Zet Zillions is a much more like refined roguelike deck builder experience with over-the-top anime style and things. You're effectively fighting like planets and other interstellar creatures, either by shooting them or firing synthetic human beings at them to infest them, so you can either blow them up or do like damage over time effects or all sorts of weird things. You also like fuse cards together, and I know there's a story. I need to put more time in this game. It's ridiculous, and yeah, $5 is an absurdly good price for what it is. Next up is Dicefolk, which is what, 15 down to 9? It is a roguelike dice builder where you're controlling a party of 3 monsters and fighting against 3 monsters. The interesting thing about this game is, because it is a dice builder, it's a true dice builder, where you are actually modifying your dice, either adding new dice, replacing dice, or even switching faces out on dice, which I think is actually a really neat way of doing things. Instead of just rolling a d6 and assigning that to an ability, you have stuff like block or attack, or retaliatory strike, or ranged attack, or just all sorts of weird combos. The other thing that makes it extra cool is that you actually control your enemies too. This is something I've never seen in another game, and I think it's particularly inspired. So you can actually choose like when an enemy will attack and who's attacking. So in this case, you have a ranged attack. You could actually have this chicken attack for 3 damage, or you could have this guy attack with 4. But if you kill the chicken, this guy's asleep, which means all of his offensive die cannot be used because he's asleep. And so you can do all sorts of weird, funny cheese moves to neutralize your enemies beyond just stunning them and knocking them out, and kind of exploiting how the dice mechanics work. And that is immensely satisfying. There's also just like a ton of creatures in the game, and they all have some really fun synergies to mix and match, and you can give them passives for even further effects. Okay, we're on the home stretch or something. I mean, you can see how many I have left. You can even see which games I'm going to recommend after this. Next up is Witching Stone. It is Slay the Spire, but, well, it's Slay the Spire in its core format, but it is a chain 3, quote-unquote, spellcasting game, where every single spell that you have requires certain combinations of spell stones to be chained to trigger their effects. So you have to trigger a blue then a yellow on this one, or a blue then a red. But if you do blue, yellow, and red, it'll trigger both of them. Whereas this is much more bleh. I guess if you did blue, green, yellow, red, red, it would trigger all of your spells simultaneously. And you can only chain so many spells together based on how much mana you have at the start of your turn. It is kind of a weird mix of abilities and mechanics, and it can be kind of hard. It can be, but not overwhelmingly so. And you can also like mix and match charms on each of your spells that will affect them in some way, shape, or form, which can get really, really busted in the best possible way. The only real complaint I have about the game is I think the runs run a little long. I think my last run was like a little over an hour and a half, and that felt like it was just dragging by the end. But I was also going for kind of a very defensive Healy build, as opposed to something much more offensive. But for me, I just love this game because these spell chaining mechanics can get really goofy. Like, it's so much fun piling on a bunch of spells that can all be changed simultaneously with each other. So you can potentially cast your entire spellbook in one shot. Next up is Talented, which is I guess it's a wave survival roguelike where you have enemies coming at you from 4 different directions, and you have to fend them off. But between every wave, you have this massive procedurally generated talent tree that you are going down, getting little like stat bonuses, unique passive abilities or even like new active abilities to add to your lineup. And you can make some pretty busted stuff. And I think there's like, I think it's 8 different classes. They just added ninjas, but I think there's 8 different classes overall, and it just gets kind of wild. I guess I would say it's kind of the simulated experience of Path of Exile, but in a 15 to 30 minute, dose of dopamine, rather than a much longer and much grindier experience. I think the music is also very good from what I remember. And yeah, what is it? It's $3. That's such an absurdly good price. I forgot to mention, I think Witching Stone is, yeah, $7.69. Okay. Oh, this isn't supposed to be here. I need to move this one down. I'll just slap it down. Whoop, slap it down here. Okay. So next up is, this one's going to be a little bit kind of random. Rather than any specific game, I just want to shout out to Thunderful and pretty much their entire lineup. Specifically for the SteamWorld series. I've been playing the SteamWorld games for a very long time. More or less ever since the beginning of the channel. I don't remember when I played SteamWorld. Like I played SteamWorld Heist first? Or did I actually play... Wait, no. Okay, this came out in 2016. This came out in 2017. Because I think I played SteamWorld Heist first, then I went back and played Dig in like one evening in preparation for Dig 2 to come out. And yeah, I've played every single one of them and done full series on every single one of them except for Heist, which I have not gone back to finishing. Mostly due to just lack of time. I just am a busy dude, and series don't work on YouTube anymore. However, I will still very much shout out their games because they're incredibly good. Dig is kind of a Terraria incremental game where you're just mining down into the world, grabbing resources, and upgrading your abilities so you can mine further and faster. Dig 2 is a Metroidvania, but still kind of operates in this same general vein of dig into the world, grab resources, bring them back for upgrades. Heist is side-scrolling XCOM, and is actually really good because you are using the natural like topography of the levels, the ships that you're in, to ricochet shots, or like shoot around cover and stuff. You can bounce off of ceilings and walls to hit an enemy from behind. Which is actually a lot of fun and is wild to play around with. Oh my god, these games are like $1, $1.20, $1.50, $2.50, $5. SteamWorld Heist 2 is $12, but it did come out last year, so I wouldn't really expect it to be that cheap. But like, truly pick up this collection. You will not regret pretty much any of these games. I think the one thing I would say is like SteamWorld build is a little thin. There's not that much to it. But like for a kind of fun town builder with also dungeon keeper elements, it's fine. It's just nothing groundbreaking. But it's fine and it's fun and it's cheap. Next up is Deep Sky Derelicts. I've got a couple of dungeon crawlers because I've been on a dungeon crawler kick lately. But Deep Sky Derelicts is one part dungeon crawler where you're going around kind of traversing this shadowed grid trying to find points of interest on the map. To complete various quests given to you by NPCs back at the hub base. And the one part kind of Darkest Dungeon style combat system where you were fighting against a wide variety of enemies. It's really tricky. Like I remember this game not being easy in the slightest and kicking my butt quite often, but it's still super satisfying and fun to play around with. It's one of the more interesting, I'd say. I think it's one of the more interesting and deep dungeon crawlers I've played in a very long time. And it's got this like really nice comic booky art style. And yeah, some of the later ships get absolutely absurd. And like figuring out how to maximize your resources to make it through these ships as efficiently as possible is a challenge in and of itself. There's also like a lot of different characters with build customization options, which can be a lot of fun to play around with, and also very punishing if you pick wrong. Let's see, what is that normally? So yeah, it's normally $20. It's down to $3. This is such a cheap game at this point. I wonder what Snowhound's been up to. They literally made this and nothing else. That's a shame. I was kind of hoping to make another one someday. Maybe they are, and it's just taking a while. Next up is Zanki Zero. This is going to be kind of a weird pick for a lot of people. It's made by Spike Chunsoft, the people behind Danganronpa, but you are effectively a group of friends who have kind of awoken after the world has ended, and you have to, you know, figure out how to survive together. And you have kind of like a hub base that you are going back to and upgrading and getting better equipment. However, all of your characters can and will die, as pretty normal for dungeon crawler RPGs, with the exception of you actually want them to die in this one, because when you do die, you actually become resistant to the thing that killed you. So if you get killed by goats, like if a goat manages to kill a character, you become resistant to goats and bludgeoning or piercing damage or something like that. If you get killed by a trap, you get resistance to traps. And so there's a bunch of weird things that you go out of your way to do to make your characters die but improve as part of that, which makes it kind of weird roguelite-y, but not quite. It also has kind of an interesting, if very anime and over-the-top story. I don't know, it's just a bizarre dungeon crawler RPG, and I really wish it sold better than this, because there's nothing quite like it. I wish I could play it fresh, or something else that very much follows suit. And yeah, what is it? $60 down to 12, which is probably not doing the game any favors. I think that's just a little too pricey for what this was. But if you like roguelike, or not roguelikes, if you like dungeon crawler RPGs, give this one a shot. It's weird, it's anime, it can be kind of tropey, but the survival elements make it a lot more interesting to me. Next up is StarCrawlers, which is extremely cheap. I think it's $5. Nope, it's sorry, never mind. It's $10. This is one of the few sci-fi dungeon crawlers, I say, after mentioning Deep Sky Derelicts earlier. But you were going through a bunch of derelict ships and like ruins of corporations and facilities and whatnot, fighting drones and other monsters, looking for clues, looking for resources, trying to find, I think it's a lost fleet of ships that is effectively like the absolute motherlode. And I was hoping it would kind of show things off. There's a bunch of different classes and ways to customize them, which allows for a pretty impressive amount of min-maxing for team compositions. And it's also got that just kind of really satisfying dungeon crawler grind that I look for in these games. And also, it looks nice. Like, this game is, yeah, 8 years old, and it still looks very good to me. They made a solo successor called StarCrawlers Chimera, where you play as just one of the character classes from the previous game, and I think it's like full 3D. I don't think it did as well, which is a shame because I actually liked it just about as much. But I guess, I don't know. I'll have to give it another shot at some point. I thought it was neat. Filament is I'm gonna say it's wildly underrated, but it is such an acquired taste of a game that maybe this is kind of the upper limit of what you would expect for a game like this. But you are a small robot going into, I think it's other machines, or you're playing as a person who's piloting a small robot. But effectively you're sending the robot in to solve puzzles by wrapping wires and cables around various nodes in a small like environment. So in this case, you are trying to kind of color match. Oh god, I forgot about this one. Okay, you're trying to color match, either color match or link things. Yeah, so this one requires purple. So you need to mix, you need to have a red go into this one and a blue go into this one, which will send purple in, red through this one, green through this one. So you're wrapping cables and cords around to trigger these. Because yeah, if this one puts blue on this one, it's going to send blue this direction and this direction, which you cannot do. So they messed up. Why did they do that? I guess the point of the screenshot is so that you get mad and fix it by playing it yourselves. But that's just this one zone's worth of puzzles. This one is completely different. This one's about mixing and matching white and orange, and I don't remember why and what and who and how. But each zone, each region has a kind of different mechanic within this wire wrapping puzzle system. And it can be really complex trying to solve some of these. It also has like a really interesting story because effectively you've been called to investigate the disappearance of the crew of the space station. And you have to figure out, yeah, what happened to them? Where did they go? And what's the deal with the alien world that this space station is orbiting over? Next up on my list of underrated games is Ikonei Island. This one's kind of an acquired taste, maybe. It's one part farm sim, one part creature collector, one part kind of I don't want to say like incremental base builder, but you're effectively going out into the environment, completing quests and objectives and stuff, kind of filling out an open world. I don't know if they have a map screen here, but doing various tasks to complete each region and then bringing the resources that you find while you're out there back to your home base to upgrade it in a variety of ways. It's 1 to 4 player multiplayer, and I guess one of the highlights is, I was really hoping they'd show this off better. Maybe they can do it here? No. You can find a variety of different creatures, so there's kind of like this weird catfish critter. And you can have them run around as your companion, or you can even like fuse with them to run around manually and interact with things a little bit more directly, which I actually found very charming. And it's also set in the Earthlock world, which I don't know how many people actually know about Earthlock or care too deeply about it. It doesn't seem like the original game sold super duper well, but it was like an old school turn-based RPG that frankly I'd say was kind of on par with anything I ever played on the PS1 era. And so Earthlock was their kind of survival sandboxy successor spin-off to it that I liked. I actually thought it was very good, and I wish more people knew about these games because they're fun. Next up is Witch Hand, which I'm not actually sure if I'm going to say is underrated per se. More, I just really like John Nielsen's games. I think he's a charming fellow, and I wish games like this would sell better. I wish his games would sell better just so he can keep making more and better games. I also really love this one. I did not like... I liked Cultist Sim well enough, but I still found it kind of arcane and frustrating. I did not like Stacklands at all. I found it frustrating. And this is the best of both Cultist Sim and Stacklands, but you're playing as a witch building kind of a base, multiple towns, automation production structures, summoning familiars, and fighting monsters and stuff. It's weird. It actually can be hard. Like, if you lose, you start over from the very beginning. So you want to make sure your character does not die. Luckily, the game's only like 4 or 5 hours long, so that's not really much of a problem. But it's a very satisfying kind of just spend an evening building up your like little witch base, getting a bunch of familiars, and hopefully reaching the end and beating the final boss. It's also got like a really lovely art style that, I don't know, I'm a sucker for teals and purples. What can I say? But it is, yeah, it's $12 normally, down to $6.59, which I think is a very fair price for what it is. I think because also he went back and added at least like one more playable character. Yeah, there was the Phoenix, which I think I'd done a playthrough of and then died because I didn't have an easy way of increasing my health, and I got wrecked as part of that. But it's still a lot of fun. And so yeah, if you like Stacklands, give this one a shot. You'll probably love it. Next up is Sands of Aura, which I think is a very critically underrated pseudo Souls-like / action adventure RPG, where you are this I don't want to say exactly like Witcher type character. You belong to kind of like a secret society of Order Keeper heroes who are tasked with fighting against like this corruptive rots type of malignancy, and you have to explore all around the world to effectively save it from, well, a variety of maladies, mostly sourced from whatever this corruption is. It plays a lot like, I'm gonna say like a CRPG, but with a more Soulsy action RPG gameplay mechanics. And there's like a lot of different character customization options. The game has this like really lovely hand-designed fixed camera perspective feel. Like the areas they feel immense in a very satisfying way, and it's fun to explore them. And I think the world itself is very open-ended in like how you explore it, because you're going around on this giant this like sand sea. We can bring it back. Here you go. You're going around on the sand ship, and each and every one of these like places you can see is a different point of interest that you can go to. You might not be able to clear it out entirely, but you can go there and do stuff there, and I thought that was very nice and fun. I really need to go back to this one because truly I will say it's one of the most like underrated games I've ever played, probably due to lack of marketing more than anything else. But it is, yeah, it's normally $25 down to $10, which I think is a very fair price for how immense this game actually is. Let's see, next up is Four Tales. Again, highly underrated game. Maybe not the most deep and interesting. Gameplay-wise, you're effectively crawling through a series of cards, interacting with things. Let's see if yeah, okay. So every turn you have 3 options, and you can choose to interact with this one, or this one. And so like this guy might want money, but it'll give you food, or you can steal some money from him. And then you might just interact with this one, but then you might find some paupers who are hungry, so you give them food, and they give you favor, which is this blue resource, which you can then trade in elsewhere for more gold, which you can then trade for more food. And every once in a while you have to like fight enemies and deal with them. And so it gets kind of ridiculous if you really want to put the time and effort into like grinding for resources. Like you can just be functionally immortal every run. But that's not really the core premise of the game. Mostly it's actually a choose your own adventure exploration game where you have a bunch of different options and places to go and ways to resolve certain events and scenarios. And each will have kind of like a different outcome, which then spirals kind of out of control into a wide variety of different endings. But the game is time loopy so that like after you've finished a run, you can start over with foreknowledge of what might happen if you go X or Y direction. And you can even potentially say, hey, both of these options are bad, give me a third option. And so like this guy might get killed in your first playthrough, but you can save him in your second. But maybe in your third, you don't even have to do anything because you can send somebody else to save him instead, saving you the time so you can go, you know, work with this lady instead. Stuff like that. The gameplay is very much kind of basic once again, but the storytelling and the aesthetic and the build quality for this game elevates it so much more. And yeah, $4 is just an absurdly good price for what it is. Have I heard of this one? What is this game? Oh, came out a couple months ago and it's, I guess, bundled in. I'll have to take a peek at it. Okay. Next up is Cataclysmo. This is not underrated in the same way of like, you know, this just undersold. Cataclysmo is underrated in the same way of, why does it only have 3,000 reviews? This game is an incredibly good fortress builder RTS where you are building these like really extensive fortresses and gates and like really complex masonry to make the like strongest, most durable structure ever, while also giving your units at like the best possible shooting avenues to deal with large hordes of enemies that periodically come to attack you. It is extremely satisfying. It's got a lovely art style. They added a sort of roguelike-y survival mode that I found extremely fun to play. And it's got a extensive campaign mode too, with like fully voice acted story and everything, and talent tree that you're putting points into to upgrade yourself for, you know, each subsequent story mission. There's nothing like this on the market. Like, you could say they are Billions is similar, but I would say Cataclysmo is vastly superior, and I wish more people knew about it. Next up is Wayfinder. Oh yeah, Cataclysmo is, yeah, not the cheapest thing I'm recommending. It's $30 down to 20, but still, $30 is a fine price for what this game is. $20 is an even better deal. So next up is Wayfinder. This one, I don't know. I know Wayfinder launched to kind of reviews, largely because when it launched, this was originally supposed to be an MMO, and their servers could not take it. It's the classic tale as old as more or less Steam opening up to indie games. One of the first games I ever covered on my channel, I actually have totally forgotten the name of it, but it was one of those like Rusty style PvP open world survival sandboxy games. And I got to play it for a couple of hours, like a day or two, and then it started like kicking off in popularity. More and more people found out about it, and the developers could not get the netcode to work at all at, you know, maximum load, which meant the game would not function anymore, and it died so hard. It was called Grav. There we go. I don't even know if it's still available on Steam. I think they took it down. I'm certainly not seeing it there. But that got the hug of death, and ever since, I mean, Diablo 3 had this issue when that came out. Their servers were hugged to hell, and game was not functional. every single online only game has always had this problem, and so of course Wayfinder had it too for like a week or two, and it was kind of brutal to the point where it killed all of their momentum at launch and, you know, netted them a ton of negative reviews, which sucks because it's actually a really fun game. It's effectively Darksiders, but a co-op MMORPG. And so because of the server issues that they were having and just the lack of adoption, they said, okay, we're stripping out the MMO part, we're just releasing this as a co-op RPG. So now you can just load it up like Borderlands and play with your friends, and they've stripped out all the the microtransactions. And yeah, now you can just play it as a full co-op game or even an offline solo game, and it's totally fine. The gameplay mechanics are refined, the art style is gorgeous. There is player housing and crafting, there is tons and tons of bosses to fight, gear to grind for. It is maybe not the most like interesting story. I think the world is interesting, but the way the story is told is kind of just basic MMO stuff. But if you want a good like looter dungeon crawlery game to play with friends, Wayfinder is really good. And yeah, they just added a hardcore mode, I guess, back in January. So if you want to play and go as far as you can before dying, like that is an option too. And yeah, it's $10, which is just a really good price for what would have been an MMO and is now an MMO in a box, and I like that. I'm so glad that they chose to do that, because it would have been a shame for Wayfinder to shut down and then just fade to obscurity. And yeah, it's a lot of fun with friends too, like having different players pick different roles, you know, healing, tanking, DPS, stuff like that. And like each weapon, you can see like they all have kind of the same attack combos, but each weapon also has like their own unique strengths and weaknesses. So some are better at like breaking bosses and stunning them, some are better at DPS, some are better at status effects. There's a lot of things to this game. It's got layers in a very good way. Next up, in terms of underrated games, oh man, it only has 872 reviews. Eternal Strands is a gorgeous, I'm gonna call it an old school action RPG. This is something that probably would have won mega awards if it come out back in like the 2000s or early 2010s. But because it came out now and people's attention just, I don't know, is harder to grab. And also there's just so many games coming out. It just got kind of passed over. Everybody instead just went for Expedition 33, which is kind of a shame because this game is like freaking good too. And I wish it got the attention it deserves. But yeah, it's $40 normally, down to 20. So like very much double A price point, but it's a good game for $20 and genuinely worth diving into. It is a little clunky here and there, and I think there were some other like small design issues, but none of that gets in the way of this being really freaking fun. Next up is Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3. Don't laugh, it's actually a really good game. It is one part visual novel, like choose your own adventure visual novel with a ton of branching paths. Each one of these is a branching narrative path. Not all of them go to the ending, many of them go to interesting dead ends, but every time you go anywhere or do anything, you might get a perk or ability. So for example, you don't start the game with steel shoulders. You get that by bashing your shoulder into a steel grating, which allows you then to use steel shoulders every time it's applicable for the rest of the game, both in combat and out of combat. Same thing with first aid. You don't know how to do first aid at first. You don't have body awareness at first. And so the game, it's one part, yeah, match 3 combat game where you're fighting enemies by matching different, you know, tiles on a board together. So match 3 knives, do 3 damage. Match 6 knives and 3 blues. That allows you to then use the shoulder bash ability, you know, on demand. And oops, you've taken a bunch of damage, first aid, heal up. It's a weird combat system, but it works well. What the heck is this scene from? Throw yourself into the void. But doing stuff like, say, throw yourself into the void, you get a perk for doing so. And you can then use that either in combat or to access other areas that are otherwise inaccessible to you. It also has kind of a goofy parody Resident Evil storyline, which I thought was very charming, and it's written incredibly well. These are the same people that did Strange Scaffold, so click holding, they did I Am Your Beast, they did Life Eater, they did El Paso Elsewhere, Purgatory Wait, they did Purgatory? Oh, they did Purgatory Dungeoneer. I get this one mixed up with a different game. I gotta go back and play this one, though. I think this one they just published. Should still give it a shot at some point. An airport for aliens currently run by dogs, Space Warlord, Organ Trading Simulator. Like, every single one of the games these guys make is, honestly gold. But this is my favorite by far. And it seriously deserves way more attention. It's $20 normally, down to 14. But even that is still worth it if you want kind of like a weird tongue-in-cheek comedy visual novel that goes way too hard and to really interesting places. And that's it, actually. That's my Steam sale video, at least for now. I think I'm going to do another one of these that is kind of a sit rep, which may have some overlaps of like, hey, here are all my favorite games that have come out in 2025 that I think are worth keeping, or here are my favorite games of 2025 so far. Just so I don't have to do all of that at the end of the year, because I want to do more of these videos. I want to take more time for it. The problem is, it is absolutely hell on my throat. I'm going to have to go get some, like, ramen or something to bounce back from this, because I am... I've gone from, like, ready and raring to go to complete desert in there, and it is a problem. But it's fun, too. So, I guess as a casual reminder, go way back into the beginning of this, that all of these suggestions and more are on my creator page. So if you want to keep up to date or like check in on cool sales that, you know, may not be happening during the 4 seasonal sales, please do check out my curator page. You can actually follow me, which I don't actually know what following a curator does. Oh wait, no. Following a curator will pop up my recommendations whenever you're looking at a game that I've recommended. Which, like, might be kind of basic, but it's still useful. I follow a couple of curators, and every once in a while I'll see a game, and I'm like, huh, I don't know if this is good or not. And, like, one of the people I follow is like, this is one of my favorite games I've ever played. I'm like, oh, I guess that's actually worth paying attention to. Huh. Rias 2 got a update. As one of those games that I'd love to recommend, but, like, not a huge enough sale that I'm, like, gonna run out of my way for it. I just can't fit everything in. But yeah, I guess they had a big kind of maybe more deserty update that happened a month ago. I will have to keep an eye on that or give it a shot because I love this game. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I will actually look at my own curator page and see like, hey, there's a sale going on, or hey, there's a new update for something that I would have otherwise missed out on, and that's useful too. Yeah, I try and keep this updated fairly regularly. Every once in a while I forget about it, and then I do like 50 in one go. Maybe at some point I'll just do a stream at some point and just curate like a gazillion games all in one go just to catch up, because there are thousands of games coming out on Steam every year. And I want to at least list some of the ones that I think are truly unmissable. But for now, at least, I hope you were able to find some pretty swank deals in this video yourselves, find some cool games, or maybe were reminded of games that you hadn't otherwise considered or had forgotten about, and this has kind of put it back on your radar, hopefully. But either way, I guess if you like this video in any way, shape, or form, leave me a like, it helps more than you know, and if you want to see more rad new games every single day, then hit subscribe, because I got tons to check out and show off. But for now, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.